It's extraordinary.
We wanted independence.
There was no hatred, there was no dispute, and there was no...
No one was really ready for it.
Hindus in India sheltered Muslims, and Muslims in Pakistan sheltered Hindus.
That we in India...
And that was a great reason why this all happened.
It's estimated that between 10 to 12 million people crossed the new border at the time of partition. Hindus and Sikhs went to India, Muslims to Pakistan. It was a dangerous time. People were targeted by those of the other religion. People left homes and land that their families had often lived on for many generations. Many fled with very little. Some went by foot in long lines of refugees, known as caravans, by train, or with their horse and cart. They had to start their lives from scratch in a new country, sometimes even learning a new language. When they arrived, they lived with relatives in refugee camps or in homes that had been vacated by fleeing families. Mohammed Zakaria Mayan, a Muslim, moved with his family from Amritsar in India to Pakistan's new capital, Karachi. Here he contrasts a peaceful way of life before 1947 with the violence he witnessed once partition began.
Before this independence was declared, people were living like a family. There was no hatred, there was no dispute, and there was no problem at all. After this partition, there was a mass movement. There was a lot of killing. Though I was a small child, but I did observe that there was arson, looting, and firing. I do not recollect people using guns at that time, but I did observe people using swords. I still, until today, am unable to know why the mass killing and massacre was there, which was not required.
Amarjeet Kaur remembers that time. She was a Sikh living in India, but saw her lifelong Muslim friends leave for Pakistan, which filled her with sadness.
It was confusing, it was disappointing, it was everything horrible that I can think of. That partition was terrible. Then those caravans started from this side. People you'd known all your lives, they were going away. Why? Because they can't stay here because they're Muslim. But there are lots of Muslims in India. But there were lifelong friends who were Muslim who suddenly turned and said, we can't stay with you.
After independence, some British families decided to stay, like Mrs. Hazel Hooper, who came from a missionary family and who lived in India from 1923 to 57. As she recalls, the British were not targeted.
And there was always a fear that our houses would be set on fire. The big danger was between the Muslims and the Hindus fighting in the streets that you got caught up in.
Mrs. Hooper said her nanny, known as an ayah, put lipstick on her forehead in the sign of a cross to give the impression she was a Christian when she left the family home. It was a sign asking for her to be spared from the fighting. Many people of all religions were killed at the time of partition, as people of different faiths turned on each other. But there were also people who acted with compassion, as John Lal, who was in Delhi at the time, describes.
I must say this, that there were cases in which Hindus in India sheltered Muslims, and Muslims in Pakistan sheltered Hindus, because people were neighbors, they were friends. They couldn't bear the idea of their friends being killed.
Since partition, people have looked for answers about exactly who or what was responsible for the violence and problems created. One thing is certain: lives were changed forever by partition.
Many South Asians who lived through that time emigrated to Britain in the post-war years. So many of their lives had already been disrupted through partition, so that when the 1948 Nationality Act gave all citizens of the Empire and Commonwealth British citizenship, they decided to start a new life in Britain, their former colonial ruler.